In a world full of misery, rage, and insomnia, there's a place you can go to just unwind. All you have to do is take a long walk into the mountains, and just past the black house, the secret garden, you'll find a small cabin. Inside that cabin, you'll find the Hole in the Wall Book Club. So now that the dream catcher's hung and the fire started, we invite you to pull up a chair and join the Losers Club as we explore the world of officious little pricks and shining on. All right, how do we start this show?
I don't know. We've talked about that for a long time.
Yeah. Hello, welcome to Hole in the Wall Book Club, the book club where we fuck. The podcast where we fuck. I'm Icy, and here is a guy who's definitely not an arsonist.
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, that's right. I think we do something about books here. I think.
Right, we read Animorphs. So what Animorphs
yes.
book have you read? I'm gonna get you to do it. I'm gonna get you to do an Animorphs podcast with me now.
I mean, I can't even. It's been so long. I have not read. I think it's probably been 20 years. I think. It has to be.
It's even better.
Right. It's gonna be all fresh in my mind, right? I'm gonna be getting all that good quality, just literature, and I'm gonna be.
Animorphs just gets weird, and I think people don't remember that. Like I keep harping on it, but that I can't get past that. Like the guy who gets stuck as a hawk, and the chick still dates him. He just like lives in a tree outside her house. It's a whole thing.
Well, I mean, everybody says it's all about the heart, right? So, they were soulmates. I don't know.
She eventually does them.
Yeah, explore more on our next podcast. I don't know what clever thing we're gonna call it.
Yeah, like hole in your head that an alien worm goes in and takes you over. Book club.
Kind of rolled right off the tongue, really.
Perfect. Yeah, that's gonna be a great abbreviation there. All right, so The Shining.
Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
In chapters 33 through 37.
Yeah. And Snowmobile, chapter 33. God, this is a roller coaster of a chapter. Basically starts with Jack out to the shed because he's gonna check and see if the snowmobile works. And we get his internal monologue as he's going through all this. And my God.
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is one of the chapters that I read, had to think about, and then before we sort of recorded, I was like, I need to look back and like look at the details of this chapter, because he goes in. I mean, we know from the previous sort of chapters, Jack is pretty much anti-snowmobile, right? Like he's essentially just going out to this shed to basically to get Wendy off his back, pretty much.
And he's convinced himself, or at least told himself he's convinced himself that everything that happened to Danny was psychosomatic. They really shouldn't leave. It's, he needs this job. His kid's going to be fine. And I'm still not sure if the whole park ranger check-in thing is even real.
I don't think it is. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just sort of have this gut feeling that, it's one of those things that Jack says, which A, is not true at all. And like a part of it is A, he isn't 100% truthful anyway. And B, he knows if he says that, he's just buying himself more time.
Right.
Like, oh, like any day now, like any day they're gonna show up.
Yeah. It'll be fine. I'm not gonna murder y'all. Why do you even bring that up? You did, Jack.
Yeah.
Nah. You sound crazy. You sound like somebody murdered their wife and kid.
You're being silly.
Yeah. Where's that roque mallet?
Yeah, right.
So he goes into the shed, and the first thing he does is look at this bright yellow snowmobile and just talk about how much he hates it.
It's crazy. It's like instant too. Like he's just like the amount of anger that comes from him just by seeing the color, and he's just like, oh, this yellow, just like a stinger or whatever. He's like, comparing it to a wasp, because earlier he was like stung. So he's like drawing this comparison between the wasp nest attacking him and his son, basically, to this damnable snowmobile.
Snowmobile.
Which is crazy, right? Like, And like I said, there's no ramp up. Like he walks in, he sees the thing, and it's just immediate hatred. Like
Oh yeah.
everything. Like of
He talks
course
about it
this thing
turns
is
his
yellow.
stomach.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
and we get like this like him thinking about this story he heard about some kid flying on a snowmobile in the back country without lights who chopped off his head on a chain stretched from two trees. Or
Oh, right. Like it's just immediate. I mean, this is Jack stuff right here, right? Like
yeah.
immediately internalizing sort of everything in a way that immediately just pisses him off.
So he checks out the snowmobile
Yeah.
and it needs spark plugs and a battery. He finds the spark plugs pretty quick. And this was kind of a beautiful little moment. He like picks up the spark plugs, looks at them, and he goes, well, I hope the gap's right, because if it's not, I'm not fucking fixing it. Like, this is the chance. These will work as they are. I'm not going to bother finding a gapping tool and actually doing this right. I'm just going to tell Wendy, nah.
Yeah,
And
you can tell by his it's like one of those things where it's like he's not to the point where he would purposely sabotage this. Maybe he will be soon. I'm not sure. But he's not to that point. Like he's not going to purposely sabotage it, but he is also not going to do anything extra at all to actually make sure this thing goes well.
oh, and he's very actively looking for any reasonable excuse for it not to work.
Oh,
I
right.
felt a lot like anytime as a kid I was asked to mow the lawn. Uh, like legit. And jumping ahead just slightly here, I did eventually find out on the riding mower, there was this little part of the hill that if you went down it at really fast speed and kicked it into neutral, you'd hit the bottom and bump, and about 50% of the time, the belt would pop off. And you didn't do any damage, but it was like a pain in the ass to get fixed. And I just pretend like I didn't know how to do it. So my dad would be like, I'll fix it later. And I'd get out of mowing. And that's Jack. Jack is looking for his hill to bump the belt off this thing.
Right.
And so he finds these spark plugs, and then he starts looking around for a battery, and he doesn't find one. And he is so happy. Like there's this whole
Right.
bit where he's doing his whole like inventing scenarios for himself, like he was doing back in the bar. There's this whole like, you give it your best try, soldier, but we can't pierce through. Like, come on back in. We'll give you a badge of honor.
Yeah, he's on cloud 9. He's never been so happy. Like,
yep. And then just as he's leaving, he turns and he sees a small box that has I can't remember what the snowmobile is called, but it has like a thing written on it that was also written on the snowmobile to mark it as a snowmobile box.
I'm trying to remember. It doesn't matter. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the battery. And my God, finding that battery.
It was an emotional roller coaster for him. Like big time. Like he's sitting here like, why why couldn't I have just blinked? Like why did I have to look right? I was just leaving. If I didn't look right there, I would have been fine.
Yep.
Like that's how mad he is. Like it's just crazy.
Yeah. There's a bit where he's like, I finally had actual good luck. The good luck of not finding the parts I need to get the snowmobile working to get my wife and child to safety. I finally had the luck I needed not to have to do that. And then my damned, what's he call it? His damnable Jack luck came back and he found the battery.
Yeah, and that was, I think that line was really interesting too, because he's pretty much saying, of course my bad luck, I would find the thing that's probably going to save us. Like, the whole line, and you're like, what? Like, what are you saying? But and I want to, again, and I brought this up last recording too. I want to bring up the two sort of sides to this, because there's one side where Jack is crazy, right? And like the hotel pretty much has him, pretty much, right? The other side is he has very realistic, real world concerns, which is, and he does say this many times throughout many chapters, what are we going to do if we live? We have no money and I will have no job. I am at rock bottom. This is literally the last thing that we have. And if we leave, we're not eating.
Right.
Also, on another note, and again, we talked about this last time, but no one knows how to operate this snowmobile. And they said the trip is an entire day and it's a 3-day hike in extremely harsh weather. and they have a 5-year-old. So those are the real world sort of concerns that are sort of right beside the fact that the hotel, like, he doesn't want to leave because he doesn't want to leave. But
He uses these real world excuses. They're legitimate excuses, but as the reader, we can very clearly tell these are the things he's using to justify it. It is not his reasons to want to stay here.
exactly. Exactly. These are the sort of the reasons that he tells Wendy, and sometimes he tells himself, right?
Right.
Like he does it, like occasionally go through this internal sort of dialogue where he's like, "Well, what can I do?" Right? But no, like when it comes down to it, he's like, "But I don't really want to leave. Like I
Yeah.
just don't."
Yeah.
So
No.
he sees this battery, he's pissed off, right? But I think that there is a time, like he gets this, I think he's walking over to the battery, and for a moment he gets a chance to see his son playing in the snow. And this next part was probably, at least to me, one of the most interesting things that happened in this whole section, because Jack all of a sudden snaps out of everything. He sees his son playing in the snow. He all of a sudden says, "Holy shit, they're right."
Yep.
Like, Danny really did see something. The hedge animals really did move, and the hotel is definitely after Danny, and it's probably after all.
Oh, and he admits, he's like, and it's in me,
Yeah,
and it's
right.
going to take me maybe when I fall asleep. And it implied really heavily he hasn't slept since that night, but I'm not positive
Mhm.
on that. I just got that there was a whole thing about like the last time we saw him try to sleep, he didn't. He just like laid there restless. It was after very end of our last section.
Right.
Um, and got up in the morning to go do the boiler. And at the end of this, he says something about like, or during this, he says something about like, and the hotel will get me eventually if I stay here, maybe when I sleep next, if I do, or something. I don't remember the exacts, but I got a vibe that he had not yet slept.
Well, I think when he did the whole thing with like the radio, no, I think he has, right? Because like when I think there's like a time, when Danny goes into 217, it's implied that both of them are sleeping,
Right.
right? But I think what's really going on is, I think if we track back to every time it's sort of implied that he is sleeping, that generally is when something bad happens.
Yeah.
So maybe that's sort of where again, this is a moment in the story where he seemingly has 100% clarity.
Yeah.
So if that clarity is correct, then maybe that is the case. He's like looking back and he's like, "Holy shit! Like every time I go to sleep, this thing gets into me 100%, 100, and there's
Yep.
nothing I can do."
And
So
he decides in that moment that they're all going to Sidewinder. He's gonna
yep.
fix this thing. They're going. He like sees that the windows of the hotel is like eyes watching over them. And he's
Hmm.
like, that shit's evil. It's gonna kill my kid. Me, like, I think there's a point like when he found the battery, he like threw the box and he picks it up and he's like, oh shit, did I crack it? If I crack this, it's the same as me killing my child.
Exactly. And he's like, I get this feeling that he's like sitting there, like holding the box now that is like the most delicate and fragile thing in the whole world. And he's so scared that he screwed up the battery. Like
And that
and this is finally, again, Jack finally free of the hotel somehow.
Yep. And that moment of clarity lasts almost until he reaches the snowmobile
Hmm.
in the middle of the room. He walks over to put this battery in, and then he's like, but I mean, if we go to Sidewinder, I'm just going to become an alcoholic again. What else could I do but drink? And that's basically killing my family anyway. And then all the self justification comes right back in.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's all the hotel sort of Jackisms come back, and I think it's a little bit. I think what's happening here, and this is only one of my crazy theories, is that I think realistically, as soon as he takes his eyes off his son, the spell is broken,
yep.
and that's all of a sudden when he's like, I think this is even a point where this is when he starts saying, "But do I even really want to?"
Right. Yeah,
He
there's this
starts.
whole thing about like, I don't know, maybe the hotel chose me to
Yeah,
write its story. Maybe it's all Danny's fault. Yeah. Yeah, if Danny and his damn shining weren't here, everything would have been fine. I
yeah,
should kill Danny. No,
right.
no, I'm not gonna kill him, but
Right. Well, it does turn into like this scary thing where it like goes from like, "Oh my god, I need to save my family," to now it's all their fault. and
Yep.
they're in the way. And Jack's not the most stable person in the world.
And there was like I think a distinct shift here though, because we've seen his anger focused on Wendy and Wendy driving him the drink, and if she's going to
Yep.
accuse him of drinking, he might as well. But now it's on his kid. Because there's this: if Danny wasn't here, none of this hostel stuff would have happened. Wendy and I would have just been happy and fine through the whole
Yep.
winter. I'd have gotten back on track. I'd have written this awesome book that this magic hotel wants me to write.
Yeah.
And his anger seems to have shifted. And how he deals with this is by taking the distributor from the snowmobile and just fucking launching it into the field, just gone into the snow.
And here's the thing too. I actually think that's really important as well, because this is not the first time that Jack has done sabotage. Like he
Right.
broke the radio, right?
Right.
And has he done anything else? I can't really remember.
I think it's just that one, but this is the first time he chose to do it.
Exactly. When he broke the radio, he was actively having sort of I don't want to say hallucination because we have evidence that these things happening in the hotel are very real, right?
Yeah,
But
it was
he
like
had
a
this event where his like dad is coming to the radio.
sleepwalking / supernatural inspired psychotic break.
Yeah, sure. And after he breaks the radio, I think Wendy comes in, he like snaps out of it and he's like, "Oh my god, what have I done?" But no, here
Oh yeah.
Here it's crazy. He's like, "Oh no, screw this." And happily. I just felt from like the words coming off the page that Jack has never been so happy when he throws this thing. He just launches it to never be found again. And he's like, "Okay, nope.
Hey,
I'm going
on
to
a
make
good
sure
path.
that we stay here."
Yep.
And then the crazy thing too, like just this cold, chilling feeling that you get from Jack, because after that he launches it, he walks out, he goes, he plays with his son. He's like, "Oh,
You have a
yeah,
little snowball fight.
yeah, sorry, Wendy. Sorry, no, it's not fixable." And he's happy.
Oh
At
yeah,
least that's what I get from him.
calm and happy.
Yeah.
Just completely at peace at this point, and it's wild. It almost felt like the moment in Carrie when she's like staring in the window, and it goes from her being reactive and like flipping out and losing control of her powers because she's terrified and afraid and angry, to the moment where she's like, "Oh, I like the way that guy died. I'm gonna do more of that." Like this is when he becomes a very active participant in this for me.
Yeah, and I think that it is very interesting to see that character shift, and I'm curious. I'm curious to see how that sort of manifests later. I mean, we still have. I mean, this is only the first chapter of this sort of episode.
Right.
But it's interesting. We don't really readily like see this in the next few chapters. I don't think we could probably debate about that in some of these, but anyway, like there's no hesitation anymore.
Yep.
So
Yep. God, this honestly, pretty much every chapter in this section was just like intense and good.
right, and again, like this chapter also made me really think too, because if you remember correctly, when they came here, like their marriage was actually really good. Like it was actually starting to get really good because Jack had quit drinking, like all his sort of like bad stuff was going away. And like when he snaps out of it, I really did spend a lot of time trying to think like how much of this is the hotel and how much is Jack, because you're sort of led to believe that a lot of it is Jack.
Yeah.
But when you see that moment of clarity, you're like, well, maybe it's not. Like maybe the hotel is just literally the poison, right? And it's just bringing out all his bad qualities, right? And they're just suppressing all his good ones. I don't know. It's a very interesting thing.
Almost like the hotel is a metaphor for addiction. I think I cracked the code.
Right.
But yeah, I loved this section, this like chapter so much. It was emotional whiplash, just back and forth, and just seeing that struggle in him was really good.
And I think it's really hard to write a chapter like this where you have so much conflict in a chapter and it's just one person.
Yep.
And so I think that's really impressive to write something like that where you have one character, he's in a shed, like he's not in a life or death like situation or anything like that, and you just have so much sort of internal conflict. So yeah, I love this chapter as well.
Yeah.
It's really really good, and it tells you a lot about Jack. So yeah, I love it.
And then from there, we jump into a Danny chapter. We got the hedges. I
Yep,
bet you
chapter
can't guess where this one took place.
It certainly happens, right in the kitchen, I think, right?
Yeah, the hedges break in through the window
Yeah.
and start eating people. Like, the book gets a little bit more just like B movie gore at this point.
Yeah,
So
right.
Danny's out playing. We find out that he's been spending more time outside because the hotel scares the shit out of him. I'm mixing up chapters, aren't I?
No,
was-
I think you're right. I think he even talks about in this chapter where he's maybe I don't know, maybe we're both doing it, but I thought there was a point where Danny's like, "Hey, I'm starting to get to know like what areas are like off limits." No, that is later.
That's later, but
Yeah, that
this
is
is
later.
when he says he's been spending more time outside.
Which
And he has
I know it's a different time period, but we're talking about extreme weather, and the kid is 5.
that's true. Like, he is straight up snowshoeing.
Right. So like again, I know it's a different time period, and I would love like for someone to reach out and be like, "Oh yeah, it was totally don't like it was totally like that back then. Like don't even worry about it."
I
We
snowshoed
had
to the
our
top of the Rocky Mountains when I
yeah,
was
we
8
had our
months old.
5-year-old snowshoeing. Sometimes we'd send them down to the factory, and they were cutting lumber and all kinds of shit. I don't like, like
That one got
right,
me.
like I'm trying to say, okay, it's a different time period, and I'm probably overprotective as a parent anyway. But I'm having a hard time imagining this scenario where the adults are just like, oh, it's whatever, a 5-year-old can just, play outside on his own, just open the door, go snowshoeing. It's no big deal. Like, I'm
The resounding refrain of this book has been, "He's 5."
right.
Like, to the
He's
point,
not.
like, I've been
He's
wanting to name every single episode of ours. He's 5.
right. Dude, he's treated like he's 14. Like, oh yeah,
Yep.
just go outside and play. Like, no big deal. Like, just we're gonna go back in. Like, there's like what?
We'll be in the
And like
bedroom
the last
fucking.
section, like what they were like Jack and Wendy were like having sex and they like fell asleep in the middle of the day, right? And they're like, oh, where's the kid?
The
He's
kicker is
5.
that's exactly what
Okay.
happened here. They're all fucking and have fallen asleep.
Yeah.
And he heads down to the playground because he avoided it the entire fall because the hedge animals freak him the hell out, and Halloran told him to stay away. But he decides it's okay because they're covered in snow. Like, he can see like the tail of the dog and like the ears of the bunny just barely poking out.
Yeah.
And it's not okay.
No.
It quickly goes very bad.
Yeah. Quickly not okay.
Yeah. He so it's like a giant like tunnel.
It's like
I
one
think
of
it was
those, like I don't know what the official term for this.
Yeah.
It's one of those circular like concrete things. I don't.
It's
I,
like
again,
a big sewer pipe, but it's up on the ground, made of concrete, like in a
yeah,
playground, right? Okay, I just want to make
right.
sure I was picturing that right. And he goes in there. There's a bunch of snow, and he like digs his way in, and then
Having a great
some
time.
snow. Yeah, and then some snow falls and blocks him in. He kind of flips out a little bit.
Yeah.
There's
Which,
this bit where
to be
he's
fair, so would I.
yeah, absolutely. This bit where he like remembers his dad telling him never to go play in the dump because some people because if he got in a refrigerator and it closed on him, he'd die.
Yeah, I think right. I think it's one of those things where like, well, if they come to pick up the refrigerator, like you're gonna be, you know what? I don't even remember. It's like, yeah, the door will close, then it won't be able to open again. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't really sure where he was going with that. But Danny starts hearing stuff like moving around in there with him. He flips out and he barely managed to get himself out of there.
Yeah.
And then he hears a child's voice from underneath the snow saying, "Come play with me forever."
Which is a bit terrifying.
A little bit, just about half cup. Yeah.
And I think this is when he also realizes that I believe this is when he also realizes that like the snow had fallen off like one of the hedge animals as well. Or maybe all of them. I
think
it
at
was one of
first
them.
he hears like a thump of snow and he turns and like I think it's the dog's exposed more.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And this is very, very similar to Jack seeing the hedge animals, where there's this like, I didn't move, But Danny figures it out and accepts it far quicker. He like turns his head back, like, nah, that thing is moving and is going to eat me.
Well,
I
Danny
need to
doesn't.
leave.
Right, Danny doesn't live his whole life in denial, so that
Right.
helps a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
deal. So yeah, I mean, I think Danny just, I mean, we know where this is going. They can move when you're not really looking. Danny immediately realizes, like, this is bad. I'm in a bad spot, and he just starts to run. Like, he
Yep.
books it, and I
Yep.
think he falls. He like falls right at the steps of the Overlook.
I think he's being chased
And
by like 2 dogs and a lion, and
yeah,
then the rabbit is watching, just being like, I get off on this. This is my thing.
right. And then yeah, I think that like they scratch him up, man. Like they
Yeah.
scratch him up pretty good. I
Like
don't
rip
remember.
his pant leg, gash in his leg. And like this whole thing is really well written, but there's just not much to talk about. Like
Yeah, I mean
they
this is your classic. Like if you read this chapter, I mean it may feel like we're glossing over this, but I mean this is just your classic like scary shit is happening in this chapter. There's not a lot of dialogue. It's just Danny and the whole. It's like an action scene.
Yep.
Basically.
It's a chase sequence.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think like right at the very end, like his parents open the door and see him. The hedge animals are back to where they always were. And then they grab him and sort of, and then I think immediately they grab him, and then it immediately goes into the next chapter because they grab him and bring him into the lobby, which chapter
Right.
35 is the lobby.
Back to this just nice set the tone for us here, buddy. Tell me where it's gonna be. I don't care about anything else.
Right. Exactly. So let's see. The lobby is very interesting. This is a scene with Wendy, Jack, and Danny, right? So we're all there. And, Danny starts sort of going into everything that's happening, right? Because I think there's like a level of trust that Danny feels where he can tell his parents anything.
Right.
Which I don't know. I'm not an expert, but maybe that's probably healthy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. He
Right.
tells them absolute every detail about the hedge animals. He doesn't mention the thing in the tunnel, and he says to, like, we as the readers hear that he doesn't because he just doesn't know how. Like he can't
Right.
find the words to explain how terrifying this was, and he's also a little worried that they're going to send him to the nut house.
Yeah, this
Like
is another just that reoccurring fear that he brings up again, right?
The men
And
in
this
the white
okay,
coats.
you're right.
He's
This
trying to
is very
remain as
interesting,
calm as possible and not cry.
right? And this is a very so we know that Jack has also seen this, and we know that Jack has written this off as a hallucination, or he's just under stress, right? He's
Oh,
written this
right.
off.
There was a point with the battery where he thinks like, that battery wasn't there. That battery was a hallucination, like the hedge animals and the thing in the shower. So I just wanted to point that out. Like, there's a point where he considers just being like, nah, that's not even real.
Right. And as Danny tells him this, Jack is super mad and slaps him right in the face.
Yep.
Like that's his anger level. Just hearing just any sort of evidence that would suggest that it's not a hallucination immediately puts Jack in basically a fit of anger.
Oh, yeah. Because, like, Danny is trying to figure out why his dad won't believe him. Is like, Jack's saying, you cut your leg on the crust of the ice. Danny's like, there's no crust. We tried to have a snowball fight and it didn't work.
Too soft.
Yeah.
It was too
And
soft, right?
when his dad slaps him is when he says, when Danny stops and he like feels inside his dad's mind, he's like, you know I'm telling the truth. You saw it too. And his dad just slaps him.
Right.
And
that's huge. Like I was like, holy like this is crazy, right? Because like that's the point in time where Danny sort of sees, I think, what's going on.
Yep.
He's like, wow, I know I'm telling this.
Yeah.
You know it. So
and I don't remember if this was at the beginning of the last chapter. We see that it might be at the beginning of the next one. I don't know. Somewhere in here, we see that Danny has felt in his dad's mind that there is something his dad is refusing to even let himself think about and is incredibly happy about. And there's this bit where he's like can you be so happy about something, but also so ashamed you don't think of it? And the only image he can get is I think he describes as an octopus flying over the snow, which is the distributor cap being
Right.
thrown into the snow. And I
Exactly.
can't remember exactly where this falls, but I think it was important to bring that up. Like
Yeah.
Danny
Right.
knows there's something his dad's hiding, but just doesn't understand what it means.
Exactly. And so at some point, I think this scene sort of like segues a little bit. I don't. I think they go. I think Danny goes away or goes to sleep, or maybe they go into the room at some point. I don't really know. But we go through this internal monologue with Jack where he essentially feels completely defeated. Like he's just like, I'm so tired. I feel like everything is out to get me. Blah blah blah. And he admits to himself, because he's like, you know what? If Wendy would ask me right now, I would tell her everything.
Yeah, he's even like, I wish she would ask me
Right.
what Danny meant. Yeah, they put him into bed. They gave him some
Yeah.
aspirin from that. There is a little bit where Wendy flips out on Jack, but she gets over
Yeah.
it real
We.
quick.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. We did sort of. We did sort of gloss over that a little bit
Because
too much. I
she's
mean,
just
Jack did slap him, right?
yeah,
And
and she's like, you
Wendy's not happy.
promised you'd never hit him ever
Yeah.
again. And she gets over it real quick. It just caught me off guard. I'm
You
kind of
know what?
thinking
I don't think she did.
that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think she's like, I need to calm down or he's gonna kill me. Like I think she thinks he's real unstable.
Yeah, I think Wendy is because she has sort of mentioned this a little bit in the previous chapters, but I think that she is slowly getting to the point where she realizes that Jack is not on her side, right?
Right.
And maybe there's a part of her that even realizes that Jack is not even Jack anymore. So I don't think she gets over this at all.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that she realizes, like, we have a big problem here. And as a matter of fact, we're going to come back to this in a moment, because Wendy actually said something at the very end of this chapter that I think is very telling as well. On to this point.
I am going to pretend to be the audience surrogate who hasn't read that. It's not that I don't remember what you're talking about.
Okay, well, what did you have anything else to say about this chapter? Because this is like the very last thing that happened that I'm about to talk.
Nothing really in specific. There's like they have a bit of conversation. There was one thing Wendy says that I thought was super interesting, and I'm trying to find it so I can read it exactly. But I'm in like totally the wrong section. One sec.
It happens. It happens. Sections suck.
Yeah. There it is. She had never seen him look that way before. Oh, sorry. Suddenly, with pity and horror, she saw what Jack would look like as an old man. She had never seen him look that way before. What way? Defeated, she answered herself. He looks beaten. And and that's when he says, I always thought I could keep my promises, and goes on his big pity trip. But yeah, we get that bit of perspective from her. I thought that was a really interesting line.
But I mean, this is really important too, because I actually forgot about that part. And I think this is what the hotel does. Is it breaks you down, right? Because Jack knows before he came to the hotel that he's done some really bad shit, but he still believes sort of in himself. Like, he believes that there are good qualities in him, right?
Right.
And you see it here where he's like, you know what? I'm probably just a piece of shit and there's nothing good about me, right?
Yep.
Like this is him being broken down, right? So yeah, at the very end of this chapter, Jack said, like, they're talking about, what's going on, they're concerned, right? And Wendy says something, I can't remember what she says. And then Jack's like, well, no big deal, like, at least it's over, right? And then the very last thing that she says is, no, it's not over. And that's why I don't think she got rid of that at all. I think Wendy is starting to sort of get into survival mode, where she realizes there's a huge problem here, and it's not over, and this is going to be bad. So
Yep, I think you're completely right.
That's the end of that. So the next one, oh man. Okay. So the next chapter is chapter 36, the elevator. And before we start talking about this, I'm gonna go over. I would like to say one thing. There's one other chapter so far that I was like, okay, if this happened to me in real life, like, my fear of this would probably send me into like cardiac arrest. Like,
Right.
and that was the chapter where Danny was in 217. Like, if that happened to me, I'd be like, yep, nope, I'm dead. This chapter may not be as intense as 217, but oh man, if this
This is your
happened in
never
real
sleep
life,
again moment.
like I I would be so screwed up. I would need therapy for the rest of my life if this happened. So so basically I think they're in bed, right? This is
Yep.
like in the middle of the night. This is right after the lobby scene. Well, I guess a few hours later maybe they're sleeping, and then all of a sudden they get woken up to this sound. It sounds like some mechanical sound. At first I actually thought that maybe like the boiler was like screwing up or something.
Ooh, you think something's gonna happen with that boiler?
I don't
I
know.
thought it was pretty safe.
They haven't mentioned it really in like since the beginning, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember any
There's
mention.
an offhand mention that there was a boiler.
Right. It was like every other line in the beginning. So
Oh, right. That's what creeps. Ah.
well, not in this chapter. Because so in
No.
this chapter, they wake up to this sound, and it's the elevator. It is the elevator going up and down to like each floor, and like this is where stuff starts getting really crazy. Like I think they're in bed, and Jack's like, "Oh, it's just a short circuit or
First
something."
off, he's pissed. He's
Yeah,
pissed they had to wake up. He's got to
yeah.
put that out there.
Sorry, I forget because Jack almost his default now is almost always pissed. I
Yeah.
sometimes forget to add that in. He's extremely pissed off.
And
That he's
wanting to
woken up
drink.
and wanting to drink.
Just
He's like,
assume
"Oh
that
yeah,
from now
just
on.
it's just a short circuit." Which I don't know if there's any elevator experts out there. I didn't know that was possible, and I don't think it is. But
I would also like an elevator expert for the time period where this elevator would have been installed, because I'm fairly certain, at least the image I've had in my mind, this is one of those elevators you gotta like clunk and like the big lever. Like
right.
that's what I have in my mind. There's an operator for this
Yeah,
elevator.
there's like a mechanical part to this where you're like, wait, what now? Like you're short circuiting and you're stopping at certain floors. I don't know. So
Yeah.
Jack is like, oh, like I gotta go out. Wendy's like, no, how like you are not going out. And he's pulling the whole, it's my job, blah blah blah. And then they decide to all go with him.
Yep.
Which, to be fair, I get. We've already seen some really bad stuff. It's better to stick together at this point. I get it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And then yeah, I mean they get to the elevator. It's like again, it's like stopping on different floors. And I think there's a point, I think this is when it starts to happen, that like Danny and Wendy can hear a party going on.
Right. And we get all this from Wendy's perspective.
Right.
Danny kind of just goes wide-eyed, long, 1,000-mile stare and like cocks his head to the side listening. And Wendy keeps having memories of a party that she keeps recognizing as like, that's not my memory. Why is that in my head? As they're looking into this elevator.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool too. Just as a, I don't know, I almost wish, and I don't know if this comes up later in the book, but I just think that's a really cool concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if they revisit stuff like this in later chapters. I just thought it was really cool. So if there's a writer out there, please write a whole book based on this concept of like, or maybe they already have. I don't know. Like I just thought it was
We
a really cool element to be like, holy shit! Like I'm reliving a memory of mine, but wait, it's not mine.
yeah.
This is from a whole different time period. Like why am I remembering this when this is like was from before I was born,
Yep.
right?
And Wendy's just like, okay, do you all hear that music? Y'all hear this whole party situation going on? And Jack's like, no, absolutely not. I don't hear a damn thing. And Danny is like, yeah, no, mom, you 100% right. There's some spooky ass shit.
Right.
I've been saying this.
Yeah.
Come on.
Literally the whole time. So
Yeah. Before we got here.
yeah. Right.
Red rum, red rum.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And Jack gets pissed. Well, more pissed. Just like, come on. You're all ridiculous. And we get the very first physical proof, I guess, here. Because Wendy like climbs into the elevator, which I think is stopped between floors at this point. I was
Yeah.
a little unclear exactly what was happening.
Yeah, it was weird. I was trying to like comprehend what was going on too.
Because she
Yeah, I
somehow
was a little
climbed
confused.
into the elevator, but lost her slipper underneath the elevator,
Yeah, I don't know.
and then starts throwing out handfuls of glitter, being like, "Oh, Jack, is this a fucking hallucination?" Glitter in the face, like, "Here's a fucking like, here's a shoe, here's a mat." Like, I think it was glitter in a mask. What she pulls out, or like
Well,
confetti. Sorry,
but
confetti.
that was after actually he pushed her down.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. That was actually after. Because that's the key thing, right? Is he gets mad at her. I think she's trying to like pull him back or something. I can't remember exactly what she was trying to do. Jack pushes her down. It's basically like,
Right.
"Hey, screw off. This is my job and you need to calm down and stop being so hysterical. You know, I'm not going to partake in your like I think he says like your group hysterics or something, like because he's talking
Mhm.
about her and Danny, pushes her down, and that's the key thing too. So he's already sort of assaulted her, and then as the scene is sort of ending, and he's like, "This is all fake, blah blah blah. You're being crazy," and that's when she pulls like the party streamers out. She's like, "So this is fake."
Is this a short circuit? I love
Right,
it.
right, and then she like pulls, she finds a mask, and she's like, "I guess this is fake too," right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's that like I'm like, "Oh my god." Like could you imagine being in this scenario in real life? Like you're in this hotel and maybe if you're Wendy, you're still like maybe we're still okay, like maybe these things aren't real, but the elevator all of a sudden, and plus before here, you have every reason to believe that the problem areas are like outside near the hedge animals, which I have no reason to go to anyway, and like room 217, which I really don't have a reason to go to.
I have many reasons not to.
Yeah, right. I have a lot of reasons not to go there. But this is the first time where it's like this is just the elevator. Like this is the first time I feel like where I would no longer feel safe anywhere, you know? And I
All
think that's
right.
why this scene, I mean, again, I
If ghosts can use elevators, no one's safe.
dude, seriously, I'm trying every time we have one of these scenes, I try to put myself in the scene, right? I try to sort of imagine what I would do if I was in this scene. And again, I can't get over this idea where I wake up to the elevator servicing multiple floors and I know no one else is there. That we're taking the 3-day hike, okay? At that point, we're packing up and we're like, okay, well, we might die, but we're taking the 3-day hike to Sidewinder now. So
Deuces.
yeah,
I will freeze to death before I get eaten by a ghost. I'm outie.
it's time to go.
Fuck it, we're hoofing it.
And there's a lot of references, not only in this chapter, in previous chapters as well, to unmasking.
hmm
And it's a mask party, and we get this a lot actually, and we've been getting it a lot. And I just want to point that out that that
Yeah, like
keeps coming up.
I think Danny's gotten some thought injections of like unmask, unmask. Jax talked about it. He found like the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't understand the significance. I'm thinking that probably it's so prevalent in the book. I'm guessing it has some very huge like significance. I guess we'll see it soon.
Right.
I don't know.
But like we haven't heard of a, or at least directly been told of like a gruesome incident that happened at that masquerade ball. We know some
Which
gruesome
is
stuff that happened and the masquerade ball, and we know it's important just because it keeps being brought up.
Yeah, and that's weird too because I thought at this point when I was reading this chapter specifically, I was like, did I miss something about the masquerade ball? Because I feel like the whole time we haven't had anything bad about this. Like this has
Yeah.
just been again, unless I'm forgetting something, which happens all the damn time.
Yeah.
Um,
But normally one of us has at least a glimmer of it. And I've got
yeah,
nothing.
right. I just it just seems like this would almost be like a happy memory of the hotel. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or
We'll
maybe
see.
that's why the hotel's mad. I don't know. I don't know.
But the
How,
way
how,
this chapter ends is basically Wendy being like, "Is this a fucking short circuit?" And then Jack takes a couple steps back, and the chapter ends. And
yeah.
as the reader, I'm angry because we don't get to go back and see them before the end of this section.
I would imagine that Jack probably just storms off and doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I
that's
think this. If Wendy had any doubts about where Jack's head is, I think this seals it. Like Jack is so clearly ignoring physical evidence he can touch.
Yep.
Like, even if it is a short circuit, where the hell did that stuff come from? Like, it's that simple, you know?
I'm
Like,
sorry.
they've been in
Well,
that elevator.
I mean, Icy, you never had a short circuit in your house? I mean, the last time I had a short circuit, it gave me. I mean, I had a Keurig machine that it produced. I had a windmill actually popped up, a full size windmill. It was crazy. You can get all
That
this.
was actually me. I've been
Oh,
breaking into your house and just leaving stuff.
okay.
It's called
Yeah. So anyway, but you're right. Like this is the first physical evidence. Like Jack,
Yep.
like open your eyes. This is real. As crazy as it is, this is real. And still Jack does not care. And that's why I think that's actually why the chapter doesn't continue, because you know he doesn't care. He's already
Yep.
made his decision pretty much in the previous page.
And
He
at this
knows
point, Wendy's only real recourse is to wait for the park rangers that may or may not actually check in on them.
right.
But Danny finds some things to do at the end of the next chapter. But we've just had some good, just straight horror chapters here.
Yeah, I feel like it's really starting to heat up, right? You have you're getting Jack physically hurting. I mean, this section, this episode, right? We have Jack hitting his son again. No, I mean, not as severe as breaking his arm, right? But he hit his
Right.
son, and then literally like 2 chapters later, he's like pushing Wendy down, right? So you have that. You have Jack pretty much giving up and be like, nope, I'm willing to sabotage our chances to escape as well. And then you just have some raw, good, like, oh my god, what's about to happen chapters. So
Yeah. So our last chapter of this section is the ballroom. We get another Danny chapter.
Yep.
And this takes place on December 1st. It starts out by telling us that.
Yep.
And this is where we get the whole Danny has figured out these areas are safe. These areas aren't.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything else I don't know about, so I don't go there.
Yeah.
And he's sitting in the ballroom, staring at the clock, and then shit just goes wild.
Yeah, right. I think I think he sees some sort of like model or something of the hotel. It was like some like ballerina dancers or like ice skaters or something. I can't remember what it was. And there was like, I think there was like a tiny clock, or maybe, anyway, he looks into the face of the clock and it's all black. And we get this same scene, if you remember earlier, when he was like, I think it was like when he was looking at the mirror, he like fell into the mirror, basically. That's the same sort of imagery that's used here. Like he falls into this void, basically.
And it starts with him staring at the clock and wondering what happens when the clock strikes midnight. Like, he doesn't know why he's wondering it. And he even gets like the injection of thought of the like unmask.
Oh yeah.
That
yeah,
whole
heavy,
thing.
Heavy
And then
too.
just like it says the words don't have any meaning to him, so he just lets them go.
Right.
And that's when he falls into this clock, and we get a full on like Tony shining vision. And I can't do this justice in the actual imagery, so I'm not gonna try. It's very similar to the things we've had before, where it's like it's written as like flashes of confusing imagery, but like we get the like take your medicine, the swinging of the roque mallet, like. But I think my big takeaways from this are he figures out what red rum is. Near the end of all this, he sees the word red rum again, but he sees it reflected in the dome of glass over the like clock and sees it written correctly as murder.
Right.
And apparently he knows what that word means because he's not happy about it.
Yeah.
Like there's this bit about wondering whether he should call to Tony, and he tries to call to Tony. Tony's like falling deeper into this hole than he's willing to go. And I'm might be jumping ahead here, but this ends with him being like remembering Dick Halloran and Dick saying, if you ever need me, reach out to me. And so he does. He screams Dick at, like into the shining force.
Well, I think, I'm trying to remember back here, but I think Tony mentions that he's being kept away by the hotel. And they have this conversation where Tony, and again, he's sort of in this black sort of void, right? He's getting all these like just raw sort of images and scenes and voices, and a lot of stuff's going on. And I get this like feeling, if I remember right, that Tony is sort of far away, and Danny's like, hey man, like I need your help. Like I really need your help here. And Tony's like, no, I can't. Like the hotel is keeping me away. And Tony actually tells him, he's like, you need to call Dick.
Right.
Like you need to.
Right. There is a point in here where Danny thinks, I'm 5. And I did enjoy that. Danny
Right.
finally being like, come on, dudes, I'm fucking 5.
Right. And again, it's so crazy thinking back. I'm really glad that I read this book this year because my son is also 5, and that's why like some of the things that happen in this book are so hard for me to wrap my head around. Like when they're talking about, oh yeah, we just let our 5-year-old son just just hang out, go outside in the harsh
You're gonna teach your kid how to
weather.
snowshoe this year? Is
Yeah,
that
like,
your
oh,
plan?
right, yeah, just
Give him
I'm
like
gonna
2 days
teach.
of lessons, and he'll be fine. Drop him
And I'm
off at
like,
the
hey man,
Rockies.
here's the back door. Anytime you want, just open that thing up, man. Just disappear, man. I'll whatever. We'll catch up to you one day, I guess. Like I don't know. It's
Flood
crazy,
your own bath, child. Still get eaten by a hedge animal. That's just bullshit.
right?
Oh.
But anyway, so he, like you said, he does it. He calls as loud as he can. And then just unless I'm forgetting something,
Oh,
well, there's one more mention here. I
there's a
think
date.
Danny expressed some fear about what was actually behind, like who is actually behind the mask.
Right.
And this is weird too. So we've had this a lot of times, right? Do you think that Danny knows who's behind the mask, and he just is like, I can't be right? Because there's a lot of like obvious imagery. At least when it comes to like the swinging of the, what is it, the
The
rope
rogue mallet.
mallet and all that stuff. Like I think we know that it's going to be Jack, right?
Yeah.
And there's multiple times where he hears, come out here and take your medicine and things like that, and a lot of other crazy s. But
I think I think
so
his
he
dad
hears
yells that at him when he's shaking him, like, after the
right.
whole
So
bathroom incident.
exactly. So he hears the voice. So do you think that Danny consciously knows it's his dad, and he's scared for the unmasking because that will like prove it definitively, or do you think
Oof.
he actually doesn't know?
I think he knows at least on a subconscious level. I don't know how consciously he's accepted this, but I think he's just jacking this knowledge.
Yeah, and the
You wanna call it
unmasking
knowing.
would basically bring it up to his conscious mind, and I don't think he's ready to
Yeah,
deal with that. So
yeah.
okay.
The one other thing I want to point out is before he sees the whole red rum murder thing, he does see one other thing on that clock face, and that is December 2nd. And then we get the murder red rum. So
Oh man, I feel I feel bad. I feel like I missed that.
yeah, there are no hands or numbers in the clock face, only a date written in red, December 2nd. And
Oh
then
man,
immediately goes into the red rum murder, red rum murder.
and
And this
that's
is December 1st in this
right. So
chapter.
this is like tomorrow.
Yeah. I hope
Yeah, I think
old
it's like
Dick
tomorrow at
Halloran has
midnight.
a fast flight.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's where our section ends. Him screaming out for help for Dick.
Yeah, so next section is kind of ominous a little bit, but part 5 is matters of life and death.
Yeah.
So what are we doing, Icy? What are our chapters that we're going to do for the next section?
We are doing 33 through 37 inclusive. I know it's only like 4 chapters, but it is
No,
a
we just did that.
what? Oh, that's because I labeled them at the end and I haven't figured that out yet. I've been doing this from the very beginning, but like I still do this wrong every time. 38 through 46 inclusive. There we go.
38 through 46. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you have any like predictions? This is hard, right? Because we sort of know where this is going.
Yeah. Like this one, I think this surprises are gonna be in like the specifics. I still think that the kid that Jack beat the shit out of, I don't remember his name. I still think he doesn't stutter.
I think it's
I'm
George
still sticking to
Hatfield.
that one.
George Hatfield, I think.
Yeah, that's it. I know you're fighting me on that, but that is the theory here I'm sticking to.
Well, I think I'm still in the camp where I just don't know, because the thing that I keep going back to, and again, I know we're getting this from Jack, right? But
Right.
he just makes this clear point that like we dropped him from the team and everybody like pretty much knew like it was the right call. But again, we're getting it from Jack, and he's not the best person to get information like this from.
Yep.
If I wanted to learn how to sabotage and be angry all the time, Jack would be a great reference. He'd be my first
Perfect.
call. I'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm calling Jack Torrance. That's the guy.
Hey, buddy, I got a kid. Can't stand him. Need you to teach me how to just let go.
Yeah, right. But yeah, just reliable information. Jack's not my first. So anyway, all right.
Yeah. We're coming close to the end on this. We've got, I think, one more section and then a wrap up. We've got, never mind.
I think
we got 2 more sections, then a wrap up.
Wow,
It's
fast.
It's been real fun so far, man. I
Yeah.
just want to take a moment and say I'm real glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, man. And again, I'm really really happy that you asked me to sort of do this. So
I'm glad we get to read about this dude beating his kid together. It's very special to me.
Right. Yeah. Then we'll do we'll do some wrap up and hopefully
You got anything
everybody's
else
liking it as much.
Before we
as
take an attempt at this clusterfuck of an ending?
I feel like we're putting it off because we know how we pretty much.
You know what? You take it this time.
Oh, I'm doing the ending.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, rock it out.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone that's listening, and I hope you're reading along too. And yeah, go out there and play some Rogue.
Perfect.
Hole in the Wall Book Club is a part of the Icynewyear Productions Network, and produced and edited by Anthony Sheets. The music in this episode is Supernatural Radio by Kevin MacLeod. There'll be a link to his license and website in the show notes. If you want to get a hold of us, tweet us at Icynewyear, or send an email to icynewyear@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to tell a friend, or leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice. Word of mouth and 5-star reviews really help us get out in front of more people, and let us expand and do more things. More information on the show can be found on icynewyear.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.